o'clock. One time? All right, welcome everyone to the July 6th Plan and Zoning Commission meeting. I will go ahead and read the rules and procedures. The Plan and Zoning Commission is generally an advisory body to the City Council. The City Council will hold a public hearing and make the final decision on all matters before the Commission other than site plans and subdivision plans, unless denials or conditional approvals thereof are appealed. Please contact the City Clerk or Development Services Department staff for details on council hearings. Applicants will be given 10 minutes to present the request. Proponents and then opponents from the public are then allowed to speak in that order, with each speaker allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. Applicant is then allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal. The hearing will then be closed and the commission will discuss and vote on the issue. All comments are to be germane to the item under consideration and speakers are to maintain a courteous manner. Items on the consent portion of the agenda will not be individually discussed and will be considered for approval in accordance with the recommendation in the staff report, unless an individual present or a member of the commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately under the public hearing agenda. We'll start by asking for a motion to approve the minutes from our June 15th meeting.
I'll move.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please raise your right hand. Pass or abstention? All those who need to pass, please raise your right hand. All right, minutes approved. I'll go ahead and read through the consent items on tonight's agenda. Item number 1 is a request from Euclid Foresight for the following regarding property located at 3619 Fifth Avenue. Determination as to whether the requested rezoning is in conformance with the Plan DSM, creating our tomorrow comprehensive plan. B, amend the Plan DSM, creating our tomorrow comprehensive plan to revise the future land use classification for the property from low density residential within a neighborhood node to neighborhood mixed use within a neighborhood node. And item C, to rezone the property from N5 Neighborhood District to MX1 Mixed Use District to allow for the use of the property as a surface parking lot accessory to the property to the south. Is there anyone from the audience who would like to move this item from the consent agenda? Anyone from the commission? The item will remain. Item number 2 is a request from Merge LLC for vacation of 180 lineal feet of the north-south alleyway located in the vicinity of 1227 25th Street to allow the vacated area to be assembled for a mixed-use development. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to move this consent item to the public hearing agenda? Anyone from the commission? Seeing none, item 2 will remain. Item 3, request from Shatter Holdings LLC for a vacation of 284 lineal feet of the east-west alleyway adjoining the property at 204 Southwest 2nd Street to allow the vacated area to be assembled for a mixed-use development. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to move this item from the consent agenda to the public hearing agenda? Is there anyone from the commission? Seeing none, item will remain on consent. Item number 4, request from 4820 Ingersoll Propco LLC for review and approval of the preliminary plat Waterbury Commons on .89 acres of property in the vicinity of 4820 Ingersoll Avenue, which would allow for development of 16 one-household residential lots and an outlot Z. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to pull this item from the consent agenda? Anyone on the commission? Seeing none, this item will remain. Item number 5, request from Park Indy LLC for review and approval of the public hearing site plan Park Indy Townhomes for property located at 3140 Indianola Avenue, and for the following type 2 design alternatives in accordance with City Code. Item A, allow for a front lot line coverage of approximately 39% on each frontage when the requirement is 80%. Item B, allow ground story entrance elevations of approximately 6 feet above the public sidewalk when these entrances are required to be in between 0 and 4.5 above the public sidewalk. Item C, allow vehicular parking in a limited side yard when vehicular parking is only allowed and permitted in rear yards. Is there anyone from the audience who would like to pull this item from the consent agenda? Anyone in the commission? Item 5 will remain. Item 6 is a request from Singh Dev LLC for review and approval of a public hearing site plan, Hardeep's C-Store, for property located at 5901 Fleur Drive, and for a denied Type 1 design alternative in accordance with City Code, to allow retention of a drive access from a primary street when drive accesses are required to be situated off of alleys or non-primary streets. This item will be continued.
Yes, Chair, members of the Commission, this is on the consent agenda, but the action you're taking is to continue it to the following meeting.
Thank you, Jason. Is there anyone on the audience that would like to discuss this item tonight? Or anyone from the commission? Seeing none, this item will remain and will be moved to the next meeting, continue to the next meeting. Item 7 is a request from Neighborhood Development Corp. For the following regarding property located in the vicinity of 3103 Forest Avenue. A, determination as to whether the requested rezoning is in conformance with the Plan DSM creating our tomorrow comprehensive plan. B, amend the Plan DSM creating our tomorrow comprehensive plan to revise the future land use classification for the property from neighborhood mixed use within a neighborhood node to community mixed use within a neighborhood node. And item C, to rezone the property from MX1 mixed use district to RX1 mixed use district to allow the development of the property for 2 multi-household apartment buildings. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to pull this item from the consent agenda? Anyone from the commission? Seeing none, this item will remain. Item number 8 is a request from Freedom for Youth Ministries for review and approval of the public hearing site plan, Freedom for Youth Children's Center, for property located at 2335 Hickman Road, and for the following Type 2 design alternatives in accordance with City Code. A, to allow a surface parking lot in the front yard when surface parking is only allowed in rear or limited side yards. B, waive the requirement to meet the 12% transparency on the western facade per City Code. And C, waive the requirement to meet 30% blank wall limitations on the southern and western facades per City Code. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to pull this item from the consent agenda? Anyone from the commission? Seeing none, this item will remain. Are there any additional items that need to be moved to the consent agenda? No. All right, thank you. With that, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move approval.
Thank you. All those in favor of approval, please raise your right hand.
Motion carries.
Thanks, Jason. Item number 9, first public hearing item, is a request from S&S Home Builders LLC for the following regarding property located at 3605 East 56th Street.
Before we get started, anybody in the audience, if item was on the consent agenda, it's been acted on, you're free to leave. Welcome to stay, though.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sriyoshi Chakraborty, Planning Staff. I'm going to present item 9, which is a rezoning request for a property located at 3605 East 56th Street. The request is to rezone the property from N1A Neighborhood District to N2B-2 Neighborhood District to allow the development of the property into 3 lots with 2 residential units per lot. So this is the subject property. As you can see, it's located along East 56th Street, just south of East Douglas Avenue, where it dead ends into East 56th Street. The general uses in the vicinity are predominantly residential, both single-family as well as multifamily residential. There's some pictures of the subject property. It's currently undeveloped, as you can see. This is a conceptual sketch that the applicant submitted, and here is East 56th Street. The subject parcel is here. It's about 0.7 acres, and as you can see, the intention here is to develop these into 3 lots with a duplex in each of those lots. There is an access off of an existing private drive, and there is a north-south, proposed north-south drive access that provides access to the 3 parcels. Again, I want to point out this is just a conceptual sketch. We are looking at the use and the rezoning, so this just gives us a conceptual idea of what could potentially be developed on this particular site. So a few things to note here. This is not within a designated neighborhood association, but is within 250 feet of the Brook Run Neighborhood Association. The designated land use is low-medium density residential. The proposed land use and the proposed density conforms to the low-medium density residential. Therefore, we are not looking at a land use plan amendment. The low-medium density residential allows up to 12 residential units per acre. The N2B-2 rezoning request is to allow the 2 residential units per lot. As I mentioned, duplexes are being proposed, and so that -2 designation is to be able to allow those 2 residential units per lot. Staff believes that this proposed rezoning is in conformance with the land use designation as well as the character of the area, as predominantly there's low-medium density residential in the vicinity. The proposed density would allow a maximum of 8 dwelling units for this particular lot, as the size is approximately 0.7 acres. A couple things to note here is that there is no public sanitary sewer or storm sewer that fronts the subject property. The closest connection would be about 225 feet south on the East 56th Street right-of-way. In terms of the design for the proposal, this particular zoning district, if it is rezoned to an N2B-2, the duplexes would have to be constructed in accordance with the House A building type of our zoning code. So based on the submitted sketch, the conceptual submitted sketch, staff did a very cursory and rough review and would like to bring to the attention of both the commission and the applicant that there could be potentially some design alternatives that might be needed, which relate to things such as maximum impervious area in the front yard, the maximum allowed driveway coverage, and finished floor area, the configuration of the primary entrance, the building articulation, and that kind of thing. Again, I would like to point out that this is based on the conceptual sketch that was submitted. There will still be a detailed site plan, and a lot of the design elements will be worked out and might change at that point. But it's something that we did want to bring to the applicant's attention. Additionally, I would like to note that there is a public side path or multi-use trail that is planned along East 56th Street. And so during the site planning stage, the applicant would have to incorporate that into the final site design. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the rezoning request to N2B-2 district from N1A district. We did not receive any comment cards or letters for this particular rezoning proposal. The applicant conducted a neighborhood meeting, but it appears that there were no attendees at that particular scheduled meeting. And this is the summary. With that, that's the conclusion of my presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
So the applicant is in agreement with your recommendations?
Yes, I believe so. We do not have any conditions, any zoning conditions. We did want to keep this under discussion to make sure that we were able to point out that based on the conceptual sketch that the applicant provided, there would be potentially some design relief that might be needed. So we did want to bring that to everyone's attention.
Okay.
You mentioned it could accommodate up to 8 units. Does the N-2 accommodate up to 8, or would they need, because they're only doing 6, right?
They are doing 6. The -2 would allow 2 residential units per lot. So the way it's divided right now, it's divided into 3 lots.
Okay.
But they could go, the total area is 0.7 acres. So if you look at the density for the entire subject property, they could go up to 8 dwelling units.
So they couldn't do three flats, because that'd be 9, so they'd have to reconfigure everything to get to 8.
They don't need to, that's the maximum they can go.
That's
They can-
okay,
they can-
right, I get it. I'm all for density, so I just.
Well, and just, I think what maybe is, there's 2 things here going on. There's kind of zoning and what the zoning will allow, but then there's the density that comes out of the comprehensive plan, which is what 135 relies on. So this actual zoning would only allow duplex configurations.
Oh.
So it would depend on how they divided out the land.
Okay.
Right now, their concept is to do the 3 lots with the 3 duplexes. But in theory, there's enough land area to do the 8.
Are there any other questions for Tsuyoshi from the commissioners? Thank you. The applicant has 10 minutes to present. Is the applicant here? Oh, there. Please state your name and address and sign in afterwards. You have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Nick Stevenson with S&S Home Builders, address 3701 62nd Street, Des Moines, Iowa. So she pretty much covered everything on that. The two things that did come up was the proposed use trail in the front, which we had already planned some space for. If that does come up, we can accommodate that, no problem. Also in the front, just to work the driveways, the street with a number of trees and things that are needed up front visually, which we can work with also. I think those are the two big question marks. Other than that, the property fits into each parcel with all the setbacks and everything it should. And then the only other concern I think there was coming off of the private street onto the main street, making sure that that was enough room for traffic to get in and out, and we found that that was too. So conceptually, it's going to basically fit what's there already. To the south is a brand new development, so it will kind of fit in with all the new houses that are going there. And then to the north is a business, and across the street is a lot of residentials, including multifamily. So it will fit the neighborhood and try to bring something that's kind of a affordable option to that area. So that is all I have. If there's any other questions for me.
Any questions for the applicant? No? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in support of this request? Anyone in opposition? Any neutral? Seeing none, I will go ahead and close the public hearing and let the commissioners discuss.
If both sides agree, I would move to staff.
Thank you, Justin. There is a motion on the floor. Unless there's any additional discussion, I will, if you are in support of this project, please raise your right hand. I should clarify, staff recommendation.
Which, same thing in this case.
Any opposed, same sign.
No, motion carries.
Thank you, Jason. Moving on to item number 10 on the public hearing agenda. This is a request from Woodsonia Donuts LLC for review and approval of a public hearing site plan. Nick will be presenting.
Chair, members of the commission, Nick Tarpey, planning staff. So this site might be familiar with a lot of you. So back in 2021 is when there was an original extent at this site. At Starbucks, they pursued a rezoning and were awarded that rezoning to allow a drive-through or keep a pre-existing drive-through at that facility. There was a site plan also at that time to do site improvements there to allow the building to be occupied by a Starbucks. That was approved in April of 2021. So that's over 2 years ago. Basically, fast forward to now, the applicant has since consolidated and kind of made their site a little bit larger through some acquisitions. And really they're proposing an expansion of their existing parking lot at their new, larger site. So I'll walk through the aerial, we can look at that, but just wanted to give people context. You're like, oh, I already saw the Starbucks a couple of years ago. This is really kind of like a revision, or they're coming back to expand their parking area. And then the other thing I do want to point out too, really thinking about the language here that's in the design alternative. I know there's been a lot of chatter about parking in the city recently. We're not talking about parking calculations, like the amount of spots. We're really talking about the placement of the parking. So that's something that I'll try to delineate and clarify as we go on. I'm sure we'll talk about both, but just wanted to emphasize that the relief tonight is really the placement of the parking is what we're talking about. All right, so digging into the aerial here. So this is a little bit older. It doesn't show all the site improvements, but generally you can kind of get the gist of it. So here's the existing building, existing Starbucks today. Really, the current site and the site plan that we have approved on file is really for this area, if you can see my cursor here. And really the area of expansion where the parking would go would be this area here that exists just to the east. This area, as people are probably pretty familiar, it's a pretty high profile location within the city, along Ingersoll corridor, in between 24th and 28th. So 24th Street over to the east here, 28th as you head further to the west. This area looks a little bit different than this aerial shows. There's been a lot of streetscape improvements, some new developments, things like that have cropped up over the last year or so. Here's some photos of the existing site. These were taken yesterday, so it really gives you a sense of what this looks like now. Got the existing building here, that's highlighted by my cursor. This area here is where the area of the parking expansion would be proposed to go. Here's just a different view, just looking straight on at the site here. So digging into the site plan, so I did want to highlight the existing conditions here. So that's with this map or this image that you can see at the top of the screen. Right now, this portion of the site, it sits about anywhere from about 8 to 10 feet above the adjacent sidewalk elevation. And generally, how the applicant would be proposing to do the site improvements here, really they've got a row of parking here that exists along the east side of the building. They'd be removing a few of those spaces to allow a vehicular climb or an access to the east, and then have a double-loaded row of parking on this part of the site here. And you can see that play out, see that play out here on this dimension plan. And so something I do want to emphasize too, or just clarify, right now there's 16 vehicular parking spaces on the site right now. The expansion would net them 11 more, so they go from 16 to 27 if we're thinking about parking counts. So, and then the other thing I want to point out, specifically related to the language about the relief, so businesses or properties are allowed to have what's called a limited side parking configuration. And what that means is it really means like one row of parking in a side yard is allowed. And so that's defined by behind this front facade of the building. So by right, they are allowed to have a one row of either single or double loaded parking in a side yard behind the front facade of the building. And really what this expansion is doing, there's drive aisles and parking spaces that, one, are in front of the front facade, and then two, we have 3 rows of parking here. So that is really what's considered side yard parking, and it's not limited side. If it was limited side, you just have one aisle with either a single or a double row. So I just wanted to really clarify that. That's really why they need the relief, and that's why they're on the agenda tonight. Dig into a couple other views here. Just wanted to flash a landscaping plan. I think that's a lot of times that comes up. People have questions about that. So this is how they would landscape the site. I'm digging into the staff report now. So generally, if you read your staff report, I think initially when we, during the staff analysis section, we really dug into that definition of what is a limited side yard of parking. So we really tried to define that and really clarify that. And then there was a discussion a little bit about parking spaces and the amount of parking that is provided on site. But again, that's not really the subject of the relief, so I'll skip that for now. And then really digging into the harder hitting parts of the staff analysis here. A lot of times when we think about these design alternatives, I think the word that gets thrown around is context a lot. And so we tried to analyze the context, both existing, but then also maybe future context. So I think something that a lot of people know is that there's been a lot of public improvement, a lot of public investment in the Ingersoll corridor the last couple of years, really to try to promote alternative modes of transportation, of getting to places. So the cycle track, the redesigned street, transit, bus stop enhancements, improved sidewalk, streetscape, things like that. And so there has been a lot of investment that is designed to promote a lot of different types of mobility, not just driving necessarily, and then also more efficient land use patterns, so a little bit more intensive development styles. So that was something that staff that we considered. And then on the private end too, there's been some market forces that have basically added some redevelopment along the corridor in recent years. So a couple examples I can think of off the top of my head is the Starlofts project that was before this commission back in November, and then also the development a little bit further to the east at 24th and Ingersoll where Thai Flavors is, if people are familiar with that. So there's been some changes that I think have fostered more of that sense of more of a denser corridor. And then also just thinking about the existing context, really, and I'll go back to the aerial here. Thinking about the existing context, there are large parking lots that do exist on either side of Ingersoll here. And while I know an expansion would be small and maybe in some people's minds insignificant, it would worsen this condition. And so that's something that, as staff, we did want to consider and point out to the commission as well. So taking all that into consideration, we also wanted to highlight what does Plan DSM say about this. And specifically, within Plan DSM, the land use section, there's a couple of goals that really highlight prioritizing development along nodes and corridors, really mixed use, a little higher density redevelopment, and a parking lot expansion to allow a surface lot adjacent to a public right-of-way really contradicts some of those goals that are talked about in the land use section of Plan DSM. So I wanted to point that out as well. So taking all that into consideration, I think staff were also realistic. We understand that businesses during certain times of day they have really high volumes and they are stressed with specific on-site parking needs. I think as staff, we understand that. We know that there is a challenge with that. We're not naive to that. And so to respond to this need, as staff, we understand that people might need to add parking to their sites. But to further our land use and our urban design goals, there are certain ways per the code where that is allowed to be added. So either in a limited side fashion, really kind of like what you call like an alley configuration on your site, or behind the building. Now, we understand with this site, there's some topographic challenges. They're a little bit limited by their geography. We get that. But taking all that into consideration, thinking about the context that I pointed out earlier, and also some of the other criteria that we're thinking about here too, it still was not really appropriate as staff to recommend approval for that. And really, there's three main reasons for that. One is the availability of on-site parking or on-street parking adjacent to the site, either directly abutting the site or within a 2 to 3 block radius at different times of the day. There generally is available on-street parking here that can help serve the need of this business. And then also, like I mentioned before, and like we looked at the aerial before, there is a lot of surface parking that does exist in the corridor, and so there are opportunities to craft shared parking agreements between different property owners with a little bit of creativity. And then lastly, speaking to a lot of that investment that's come in the corridor in the last couple of years, there's been a lot of development of different types of mobility options that can have people access sites not necessarily needing a car or a single vehicle trip. People can take the bus, or they can walk, or they can bike, and that has become a lot more palatable on this corridor and really, especially compared to other parts of the city, as people may know. So taking all that into consideration, as staff, we thought that the applicant needed to present a more complete burden of proof to win the recommendation of staff, and so we don't support the design alternative request. Now, we did get some comments. I'll read through those, and then we can talk. So this is really the area that was notified, where we sent out comment cards. This letter here, so this is from the Avenues, which is a nonprofit organization that really has done a lot of investment, I think, in business support along the corridor. And so I'll just let this hang here. You guys can read what they had to say. And I'll zoom in too. When you're done, if you want to look up so I know when to move on, that'd be good. Okay. And then did get a few emails just kind of inquiring about the proposed development. This is a comment in support from an adjacent property owner. And then similarly, so that's it for me. I'll take any questions if you have them.
Going back to the letter from the Avenues, was that in support of the proposal?
I think my interpretation of that is that conditionally is how I would phrase that. So I think the idea behind it is they could get behind it if there was some sort of shared arrangement and if it came with some public art.
I have a question about that. Is that something we can even do, though? Do we have authority for that?
I think the applicant could agree to shared parking. I don't know that we could mandate that, but I think on their own, they could agree to that if they wanted to, and we'll let them speak to that.
Like that would have to be like a private contract, though, with, right? We could.
Well, shared parking can take many forms. It could be informal. I mean, shared parking happens today, informally,
Right.
often. But it could be something where they work something out. I think that's something we'd have to have some conversation, but I don't know that the commission's action, I think you'd be reacting more to what the applicant might have to say about it. And then second, the art or landscaping, that sort of stuff, that's a physical improvement. So I think you're fully in your right to ask for screening and stuff that would compensate for this improvement. That's a fair trade, or you're mitigating impact.
Nick, how much excavation would be required to put in the lot? And the other question is, if, given that and the impermeable quality of the slab, what is the story as far as drainage is concerned?
Yeah. Good question. So generally, my understanding, and the applicant is here too, they can maybe speak a little bit more in depth to this, but generally the site, like I said before, it sits about anywhere from like 8 to 10 feet above the adjacent sidewalk. And really, kind of how I would describe it is they're planning on smushing the site down. And so it's not going to be brought all the way down to grade adjacent to the adjacent sidewalk, but it'll still be about 4 foot above there, is generally the kind of excavation that they're going to be doing, if you can visualize that. And generally, too, the site, the amount of impervious that they're adding, it does not trigger formal stormwater management per our engineering staff.
New lot, like 4 feet above the existing lot?
Correct.
Too?
Yes. So this would rise.
Nick, could you just
Is there
maybe-
an accessible route to Starbucks from there?
I'll let the applicant speak to that. Sorry.
I was going to say, if you zoomed in a little bit more, they might be able to see the contours on the screen.
Oh, yeah, I'll go to a different view.
I'm assuming they're probably meeting their
Yeah.
ADA on their existing site.
I don't think that was something that's not something that I would look at during a site plan review, but I don't think that was something that has been commented on so far.
This site is awfully small. If we didn't let them put a parking lot there or something, could you develop it into anything else? I mean, is it big enough to support anything?
I think we talked about that. I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily a staff's position to impose or dictate necessarily. I think potentially. There's also an opportunity, I think there's a large parcel next door where you have a surface parking lot. You know, there could be an opportunity to combine parcels and combine areas to make something larger into the future. I think we were trying to think about both of those potential scenarios.
Is that Noah's Ark?
Yes, correct. Yes.
So I like the idea of shared parking with those two properties being close. The pizza spot, Taco John's, like they're getting frequent, and especially at later hours, because I like the pizza spot. But there just needs to be parking. I would just be interested in there being like, I know we can't demand it, but like a no-tow ban. That they don't sign a contract with an individual towing company, and they just let the space be used once the cafes close. I know we can't do it, but I'd push for that, definitely with that space being very limited parking, so. But I'm for it.
Are there any other questions for staff? Thank you, Nick. The applicant has 10 minutes to present. Please state your name and address and sign in afterwards.
I'm Jeff Elliott. I'm one of the owners with Woodsonia, 20010 Manderson Street, Omaha, Nebraska. Appreciate the opportunity to stand before you tonight, and I just wanted to express my appreciation for staff and commission and council in working with us 2 years ago to make this property happen and redeveloped. We all worked hard together to create a space and a building that we believe fit in the neighborhood really well. And we appreciate you working with us to allow us to use the existing drive-through. We put the block walling up there, the landscaping, the design of the building to, I believe, really fit into the neighborhood really well. And if you've been into the building, you'll see a space that has a lot of nice place for conversation, for sitting and talking to your friends, whoever you meet there. There's a conference space, and it's really being underutilized. And so with the existing 16 stalls, and you think about it, there's one handicap stall, there's 3 pickup order mobile pickup order stalls, and there's 6 to 8 employees. So when you think about the existing stalls, you really have only 5 or 6 stalls for customers to come in. So our added 11 stalls would just help the facility be used in a better way to allow people to come in and sit and share and meet your neighbors and have an enjoyable time. If you look at the landscape plan, we're proposing to do similar type landscaping. We propose to put a screen wall, I think some sort of a fencing to somewhat hide or mitigate having the parking on the side of the building as opposed to in the back. And if you think about what you can do with 0.16 acres, there's just really nothing you can build to better utilize that space. In talking to our employees, they have tried to park in the Taco John's parking lot, and their cars have been towed, or they've been ticketed. They haven't had the ability to utilize that parking lot. And Noah's is the same way. They just haven't been open to allowing us to share parking. I think we would be open to your idea of a no-tow agreement, and we would allow the neighbors to share parking as parking stalls are available. So we want to be a good neighbor. You've been good to us by allowing us to build this business here, and it's doing well, but I think it can do better, and so I appreciate your support.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? He says a few minutes left. Presentation? No?
Yeah, I do. I know that there's an existing retaining wall structure on that site now, and it looks like that it's maybe 2 owners or 2 separately built retaining structures, and it looks like the one to the east is out of plane with the one along Ingersoll, and it's maybe in an early state of failure. And I guess, could you talk a little bit about how you're mitigating that failure with this development?
That would be removed, and so it would naturally slope up to this parking lot, and so it would be green space. And Nikki, maybe you can speak to that.
I need to press the button.
It's on.
It's on, okay. Okay. Otherwise I can pass around too.
Well, we should go again. Is the power button on?
I can at least speak to it well. Yeah. Nikki Neal with Civil Design Advantage, 4121 Northwest Urbandale Drive. We are the civil engineers on the project. So correct, that portion of the Noah's Ark is what we're talking about. That wall would be removed. So if you imagine their back wall would then be expanded and pulled behind this property.
You had it over a second, right? It was on.
But yes, so if you imagine the frontage wall, there we go. So, I think it shows my hand. Awesome. Okay, so this whole wall that you're talking about, I assume that's kind of starting to give. That wall would be removed, and if you kind of see where this wall is on the backside, we would imagine tying into that and pulling that and wrapping it back around this property on the backside. So basically, we're taking this.
So this white wall in this picture is not your property?
Correct.
This is the neighbor's property?
Correct.
And you're going to fix it at your expense?
Correct. I have a lot of wall pictures if anyone wants to see. Sorry.
any other questions for the applicant?
I have one. So, who are the people that are using your lot today? Is it primarily your employees?
I would maybe let you speak to that.
Jeff Elliott again. It's a combination of employees and customers.
Okay. I'm a bicyclist that use the red lanes in front of your shop almost every day.
Okay.
And it's a little bit dangerous, as I'm sure you know, because people are coming down from Grand and they're doing a U-turn into your lot. There are people coming out of your lot. You know, there's a lot going on there. As a bicyclist, I'm got my ears wide open and my eyes wide open there. So most people use your drive-through, right? Obviously, most of your customers are using your drive-through. For instance, the last day and a half, I went by and counted 8, 7, and 6 cars in your lot at any one time. So I don't sense a lot of pressure on your lot, mostly because people drive through pretty quickly, and you've promoted the drive-through because it's right up front, and you got an exception for that. So I'm not moved to understand why you would why you need more spots, one, and why you would want to encourage people to drive on this particular corridor, which is the one in the city that extensive amount of money has been invested in off-street bike lanes, to build a vibe of walkability and bikeability, an urban feel of storefronts facing the street. So it kind of goes against the whole credo of Ingersoll Avenue. My question is, while Taco John's may not like your employees parking there, nor the Pancheros people, the gentleman that owns Office Max and Dollar General, and that lot is different. And he is going to be rehabbing the Hojos right behind you. Have you talked to him about your employees parking in his lot?
We have not, no.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I know you had mentioned safety concerns specifically in this area, and I would say what we're looking at on the screen, not, obviously, yes, it visually looks not great right now, but what I'm saying is, to me, that's a safety concern when a car is stopping to come out and then you have pedestrians. So there's visually a blocker at this point. And so that's part of also what we're trying to do is ease that safety concern. When it
Because
does
of this
come.
wall?
Correct. So being able
Not
to.
this wall. That's not where the safety is right now. If the wall falls down, it's unsafe. The big safety from a bicyclist point of view is right when they're coming down next to Taco John's and flipping into your drive-through and coming out of your drive-through. That's not where this is. Right?
Correct, but I would still say we do have vehicles that do exit out of this area that we are trying to ease up on and visually provide that safety so someone can see a pedestrian coming from that east side as well.
Oh, okay.
Yep, so the vehicle view is restricted by the wall, I know, for pedestrians that are heading from the east to the west. So that's also the intent, where we have a 10-foot wall that we are then taking down and lowering and slowly sloping up for a visual.
Has the city cited you for that?
The wall
they
is
own it, though,
existing
right?
today.
You don't own that wall? You said you do own it.
They own that site, they own the site
Right.
right now.
But I mean, if it was an unsafe situation from a vision triangle point of view, you would think the city would be requiring you to change it.
And that's what we're trying to do. That's part of what we're presenting here
Yeah,
today.
it's an existing condition.
It's an
Right,
existing.
so The city has done a lot of vision triangle work on this. That's why the curb bump outs are there and the, why the parking is the way it is. So I'm not sure how a retaining wall on the other side of the sidewalk would.
So when this property was initially developed, they did not own that piece of land. So we did not have any say over if this wall, nor did the city have say to tell us to take this wall down or not for visibility purposes. Now we have purchased this piece for, that's a portion of the reason for that. As we know, that is a safety concern. There is no actual access, legal access to this property either today, so there's no existing easements in place. The only way to access this property is technically to illegally go through Noah's Ark, wrap up and around, so it's actually, this portion really is undevelopable when it comes to access easements, when it comes to setbacks, and really just the extreme topo on this site. You know, those are, as stated, 8 to 10 foot walls that this is elevated in a platform on.
Could be a green space.
Yeah.
Have you considered sort of long-term, the highest and best use for this, this sort of like accumulated parcel now with the addition of this piece plus the Starbucks piece?
Correct, yep. So that's one of those items that we've really thought about too, is yes, this meets and kind of solves this immediate need for not only Starbucks and kind of this area and the congestion, but then in the future now, what we've taken is this really undeveloped parcel, we've combined it with a larger parcel that in the future, say if Starbucks was to ever leave, say if this building is no longer occupied, we have that space to actually redevelop this whole piece into something, say, much more high density that would be, I know, probably desired.
How long is the lease for Starbucks? How long can we expect to have that use there?
I believe it's a 15 or 20-year lease. With a number of extensions.
Do you have approval from Noah's Ark to do this work from the building and property owner as well as the restaurant management?
From the property owner, we do.
Okay.
Is Noah's Ark even open right now? They are, okay. They weren't for a while, so I was just wondering.
Unless there's anything else, I'll thank the applicant for answering a lot of questions. And I will open it to the audience. Is there anyone in favor of this proposal that would like to speak tonight? Anyone in opposition? Please state your name and address and sign in afterwards, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Bridget Botkin. My address is 3818 Amherst Street. And I am speaking today about, I think this is a horrible idea, adding parking here for a few different reasons. As a couple other people have pointed out, it's a huge slap in the face to the work that has been done in that corridor over the last year or two. The problem with Des Moines as a resident is that so much of our infrastructure was locked in during the Eisenhower Interstate era, meaning that our infrastructure was made for cars and car drivers, not pedestrians or people who don't have the privilege to own a car or who can't drive for physical reasons. And all the work to create the streetscape on Ingersoll and the work that's now starting in the neighborhood I live in on the north side to take these thoroughfares and redistribute the equity so that pedestrians do have more power and do have more control in these settings. And the philosophy of all of that doesn't work if we're incentivizing people to drive there. And when we add parking spots, What are we doing? And I'll be really honest, this dude clearly doesn't live here. He's from Omaha, so he doesn't know this. When people want community in Ingersoll, they go to Zanzibar's. Zanzibar's has the best coffee in the city, and it's 2 blocks down. The people who really care about connecting with their neighbors, they're doing it down at Zanzibar's. People go to Starbucks when they want something quick, when Zanzibar's is closed. It wouldn't surprise me if they see the lion's share of their business between 3 and 7 p.m. when Zanzibar's is closed. Additionally, this fixation on this area of hardly developable space next to Starbucks, sometimes space can just be space. Space is not ours to commodify. We are not automatically entitled to commodify it just because it exists. Sometimes space can just be space. It's giving white settler colonialism to be greedy about developing it into something to profit off of it somehow. Space can just be space. Thank you.
Thank you. Please sign in when you get a chance. Anyone else in opposition?
Nobody else signed in.
Please make sure everybody who's spoken tonight, if you can sign in, we need to keep that for the record. Anyone else in opposition to this project? You have 5 minutes. Please state your name and address and sign in afterwards.
Good evening. I know some of you, not all of you. Pleasure to speak with you. My name is Alec Davis. Here, I live at on 26th and Woodland, so this is literally 3 or 4 blocks by my house. Like Carol, I use the bike lanes very frequently in this corridor all the time. Excited to see them installed. I'm here representing Momentum DSM. We're an urbanism advocacy group. We are here to talk about better urban planning, road use, land use, all that stuff, and really trying to undo the mistakes of the past 75 years. This is not really, it's not a big lot, it's not a thing, but it's kind of symbolic, and so I guess, my thought is if the mayor can complain about losing 20 parking spots, I can complain about adding 20 parking spots. So I think this is the symbology of we're trying to make a corridor for everyone. We're trying to make it pedestrian, bicycle friendly. Ideally there wouldn't even be a drive-through on this corridor, but that's legacy mistakes. We have to deal with it. So I hope we can continue. Our stated position around Ingersoll is we need to continue to build more safe connections so that there will be more cyclists and pedestrians who can access it. It's literally the only safe route. You can be safe on there, but then the second you leave Ingersoll as a cyclist, you're back in the road. We want to see the elimination of these conflict points, so we still, and to you, the planning zone, when you look at plans, look at ways to funnel drivers onto side streets, alleyways, reduce those points where they're having to cross with the cyclists and the pedestrians. Obviously, a drive-through on Ingersoll does the opposite of that. We want to see more shared parking resources, as stated over and over again. There's a ton of parking on Ingersoll that sits empty for 18 to 20 hours a day. It's terrible land use. And then we want to see more robust transportation. So hopefully, if we continue to do all that, we'll see a corridor that can really see true modal shift, allow people to do things other than just drive there, which should align with Move DSM, should align with Adapt DSM, and all our plans to become a sustainable city. So I understand what they're trying to do here, but I think from a symbolic standpoint, if not anything else, but really a practical thing, is if we keep subsidizing and incentivizing driving, we're going to get only drivers. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in opposition? Any neutral? You have 5 minutes if you would like. Please state your name and address and sign in afterwards.
My name is Chase Seibert. I live at 1989 Southwest 9th Street, so just about 2 miles from this location. I just want to echo everything they said. I think there's plenty of opportunity for shared parking. I don't think we need to add any more spots to this area. I like to keep focusing on pedestrian and bike safety, and yeah, that's really it. So thank you.
Thank you. Any audience members neutral that would like to speak tonight? The applicant does have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
I know a few of the points as was stated, slap in the face for the corridor work. And I would almost say that's the complete opposite. That's saying that what you guys have done and the investment that's been created is working. It's bringing people to Ingersoll. So, and you're having companies come in and want to develop and redevelop within this area. So I would kind of disagree, I guess, with that, but that's my thoughts. So there was a statement of between 3 to 7 p.m. when Zanzibar is closed. Starbucks peak hours, and very specific for this location, is Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m., Saturdays, 8:30 to 10:30 a.m., and Sundays, 8:30 to 10:30 a.m. I even have customer numbers based on that, so I would say that is probably a false statement that it is, yes, still first thing in the morning. Generally, it's a coffee shop, first and foremost. So first thing in the morning. And just to speak on the bike parking, currently we have 2 spaces on site with 12 provided off-site. I know that the city put in. For the 2 spaces out of the 27 that we're proposing, that is 7% of our parking. In a ballpark number for any given number of customers who bike or walk to this location a day is less than 5 to 8%. So I know at least on-site, we are meeting that on top of the 12 spaces. So if you're at a total of 14 between the ones directly in front of our site and on our site, you're at about 51%. Just kind of some rough numbers there.
Thank you.
Yep.
With that, I will go ahead and close the public hearing and let the commissioners discuss.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, Will, go ahead.
Let me share something I've experienced in small-town Iowa. Parking on Main Street. You can see a car parked in front of a store during the whole time the store is open. And it's the owner or the manager that parks there. And it makes it kind of inconvenient for people that want to park there and buy things, right? This notion about shared parking, I think, has a lot of validity to it. And this parking lot, this big parking lot with Office Max and so forth, if, you know, the 5 employees or however many that are working at the store can walk half a block, I mean, how many parking stalls would that free up at the site? So that's one of my thoughts.
Thank you. I support the requested relief for this, and I'll try to explain why. Because I do have sympathy and relate to the idea that the trend and the desire for Ingersoll in particular, and a lot of our streets, is towards a more inclusive and pedestrian-oriented streetscape. But I think that that's a long-term process that is actually served by this successful redevelopment of an existing fast food building that's probably, it was near the end of its useful life, into a Starbucks with a 20-year lease, which has become a very valuable property. And I don't think it's inappropriate to think about how the value of this property has been increased by this redevelopment, which was not allowed by the zoning ordinance. It had to receive relief to even become a Starbucks. And the fact that the Starbucks has been successful enough that it justifies this expense, this additional investment in the property, I think is a good sign. And I think that when in 15 or 20 years, when Starbucks goes away, that the opportunity for redevelopment at that time is probably, we'd probably have a hard time imagining what this land might support at that point. I think the opportunities for a successful redevelopment within our lifetime is increased by allowing Starbucks to add parking now. And the other thing that I think about is that if this owner hadn't bought this small undevelopable parcel, it would remain undevelopable forever because unless the Noah's family bought it and included it with theirs. So this is probably a best case scenario for this particular piece of ground for now. So I think from a pragmatic point of view, I support this. While I do agree with and respect some of the opposing points of view that have been shared, I don't think that this example hurts Ingersoll. I think that this plan helps Ingersoll. So I will make a motion to allow the requested Type 2 design alternative.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there any additional comments the commissioners would like to make?
So you're going against the staff recommendation, is what you're saying?
I am.
What was the staff recommendation again?
To deny.
I will not be supporting your motion, and I just want to say once again, it's clear where I lie. The corridor is here now. The investments have been made now. It's working now. It's not 20 years from now. And if we continue to support the use of driving your car and building a bigger lot that it's not like the lot is bulging today from overuse, it goes exactly against everything that the SMID has been built for, that the business owners along the corridor put their funds into, that the city has invested millions into. That's today. And to in my opinion, go backwards, is really unfortunate. So that's, yeah. Again, I will not be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Yeah, I got a comment. I'm about to make a switch. There are 46 parking spots that I know are unused. I drive that route from Ingersoll going up to Grand. Yeah, I was convinced today by the public about the usage of Ingersoll. So yeah, there's 46 spots in Office Max. If you look at Noah's Ark, they have an opportunity to push into what they already own on 2408 to turn those into more spaces as well. Yeah, I'm struggling. I was for. I love the idea of like sharing and doing the tow ban, and I love that, and I think more businesses should do that, definitely along that corridor. But for what the investment was, and I know that's millions of dollars on Ingersoll, I'm going to vote to not allow it to go in.
Thank you, Justin. Katie?
I agree with Todd, and I will vote in favor of his motion. I think primarily because this is such a small piece of land with absolutely no access, with crumbling walls as it is. It is a complete weed-infested area, eyesore. I can't imagine anyone else coming in and doing anything productive with this piece of property at this point or for the foreseeable future. And for that reason, I think that it will also alleviate the pressure in that parking lot. I've been in that parking lot. It is a tight squeeze. I think that's why people come shooting out of there. I think it will relieve the pressure on there in that drive-through area. I love the idea of shared parking. I just don't think it's realistic. Noah's has got a lot going on over there right now with their business, and I just don't think that's realistic. I think people get very protective of their parking. Right now, it's all over the news about how there's no parking on Ingersoll, and I just think right now this is the most realistic usage for this property.
Will?
When Nick was giving a presentation, he talked about limited single or double row parking on the site. And I'd like more information about that, quite frankly. It seemed as if when we were hearing staff was suggesting some kind of a compromise, and maybe I'm wrong, but you need to unpack your thoughts, please.
Okay, so just to try to explain this concept, I know it's a lot of words, so it's a lot of jargon. I apologize. So by right, People are allowed to have parking in this zoning district with the building type here, site design standards. They can have it in a rear yard, so that's behind the building, or they can have it in what's called a limited side yard. And so that's parking in a side yard, so it's behind the front facade, and it would just be one row of either a single access or a double access, if you can follow my cursor, on the side. Now, the reason that this needs relief is because there's some parking here and drive aisles that sit in front of the front facade of the building. So here's the front facade of the building. We got some drive aisles and parking that sits in front of it. And then also, there's 3 rows of parking. So it's not a single row, we got a double row here. So we got a row of parking here, we got one here, we got one here. And so that disqualifies it from being called quote-unquote limited side, which they are allowed to do by right. So that's why they need to seek relief.
Nick, just for clarification, at that marker 9.50, that's the cutoff? Is that correct, from it being the forward-facing facade?
You're saying like right here?
Yeah, if you keep going
Correct.
to right where it's like 9.50.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's basically like front facade extended.
Okay.
If you want to use that
So
terminology.
staff is saying to make sure it's don't allow what's in this island, above that island, essentially.
Just saying, the reason they need relief, I don't know if we're recommending a middle ground here, the reason they need relief is because they have parking that's proposed in front of the front facade, and it's not in a limited fashion. So we have multiple drive aisles or rows.
Okay.
So if they,
I want
It's
to try and bring us back to the discussion and the motion that we have. Any final questions for Nick before we get back to that? Thanks, Nick. Todd?
I tend to agree with Andy. You know, the streetscape's incredibly successful, and the redo of the parking lanes along Ingersoll, right now at this point in time is a terrible time to be analyzing this. 28th Street's closed on both sides of Ingersoll. You can't get to or from it. I'm not sure that the drive lane next to Taco John that connects Grand to Ingersoll is technically a public street. People use it all the time. I do right now because I can't go down 28th. So there are a couple things that concern me about this and the use of this parking lot because, you know, I do go to Zanzibar, unless I can't park in front of it. Then I defer, I go down here. And when I'm in this parking lot, it seems like the east entrance to this parking space, or this area, yes, right there, is going to become worse because of this. I'm never sure if people should be coming into the parking lot through that entrance, or if it's out only. It's super narrow. This brings up some of Carol's. There's always issues there. People coming in and out, people get stuck in the street, people turning left, going west into this, realize, oh, maybe I shouldn't be going in here. Creates a number of problems. There are a lot of bikes. I think that needs to be looked at more thoroughly with signage or something to direct people into the lot on the west side and make this out only on this side. So that's just one observation. I do think that for the time being within our lifetimes, this as a parking lot is better than this as a landfill, which it basically is now. You watch some of the photos they showed, you see the water runs off across the new streetscape, the new sidewalk, the bike lanes. It's all washing down across all of that out of this site. It's basically, if I remember right, this is mostly fill. So at some point, it's just going to, you know, give in. It's a nuisance, as it is. A parking lot is much better than it being fill for the next 20 years. I mean, these people have bought it. This is a better use than it is now. Maybe within the next 30, 40 years, when whatever happens to Noah's and that property, that redevelopment that we've heard some about, will spur this to be redeveloped. This will be more valuable at that point. But for the time being, I think this is improvement on Ingersoll, which flows along with everything else on Ingersoll, and allowing people to park here And please explore a joint use or some kind of shared parking agreement so that people that want to go pick up a pizza from Big Tomato or something have a safer place to go. I don't think you're ever going to get Taco John's to agree to allow parking in their lot, but maybe if we set an example here, they will. So that's why I support Andy's motion.
Johnny?
Thank you for sharing.
I thought maybe we could meet a goal that the applicant had requested, which was building a sense of community. And why not create a little pocket park in that space and allow for, share, for people to sit, have a little, have picnic tables and things like that and shade that they could create that sense of community. So that's why I'm not going to support Andy's motion. We have enough parking.
Thank you. We've had a lot of good points tonight, a lot of good discussion. We do have a motion on the floor, but I will not let the vote until I share my 2 comments. Thank you all for sharing your comments. I agree with a lot of it. I think that this is definitely a tough and challenging small site to put into productive use. That said, I will not be supporting the motion because of the aforementioned media, lack of parking, et cetera, because I believe that is a false narrative. So with that said, I don't have to echo everything else that has been said. We have a motion on the floor to deny the staff recommendation to approve the site plan as submitted. All those in favor for that motion, please raise your right hand. The motion is to approve the site plan as submitted, not staff recommendation, which is denial.
If I could, that's correct. I guess the only thing I'd add, I just want to clarify that there would still be administrative review comments that when you, so you're granting the relief and.
Granting relief subject to administrative comments. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Any abstentions or pass?
I have the motion passing 7-5. Did you have the 5 at least, or the 7? One of the 2? Yeah, it's less names, so if the 5 in opposition could raise their hands, that'd be great.
Thank you. Motion passes 7-5. The next item on the agenda, item 11, is a request from Aimee Rapada for review of a public hearing site plan and for a type 2 design alternative over at the property located on 2334 East 41st Street. Kyle will be presenting from staff. Thank you for signing in.
No, you're fine. He's just waiting for people to sign in.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the Commission, Kyle Larson, Planning Staff. As Johnny mentioned, this item is 2334 East 41st Street. This actually came to us through a zoning enforcement action, work without approval. I'll run through what the applicant is proposing here. They're looking for 2 items of relief. The first is front yard impervious area, and the second is overall impervious area. This property is located on the far northeast portion of Des Moines, on East 41st Street. Here's a map that shows the general vicinity and the neighborhood it resides in. These first 3 photos are photos that I took yesterday just to orient you with the site itself. This is a view on East 41st Street looking to the north. And this is East 41st Street looking to the south. And this is the subject property, 2334 East 41st Street. The next series of photos are photos that were taken by zoning enforcement staff when the stop work order was issued. I apologize. Here's the site sketch for the applicant. I've highlighted the areas of pavement that they are looking to add. You'll see that front yard driveway flare in the front yard. And then you'll also see a larger parking area in the rear yard. Now I'll run through those photos from zoning enforcement. This is, let me zoom in a little bit. This is the work that began in the rear yard area to prep for that pavement pour, essentially paving in the entirety of the rear yard. The paving would go up to the fences at the rear yard and also the fences on the side yards. You can kind of see the line that's been pulled there by the contractor. This is a view looking back to the east at the rear of the house. You can see that there is existing paving. About 50% of the rear yard is paved currently, and so the applicant was looking to pave the rest of the rear yard. This is along, I believe, the north property line, some of the excavation that has been done right up to the neighbor's fence. This, again, is that kind of north, looking down the north property line. The existing driveway next to the house is also getting replaced. Moving to the front yard, this is the flare that had been poured, and you can see that the existing 10-foot driveway was removed and is also in the process of being replaced. The driveway, the 10-foot driveway here next to the house and into the front yard was in disrepair and needing replacement. Obviously, that would be general maintenance work that would be allowed to be done, but it's the additional paving that is triggering the design alternative tonight. Here's another view from the corner of the house, kind of looking into the rear yard. You can kind of see and gauge some of the, I guess, topography that they have in the rear yard. Staff obviously has some concerns with controlling runoff with this large amount of paving. This is the letter of rationale that was provided by the applicant. Couple items, just, I'm not going to read it word for word, but just kind of the 4 items that were identified. I mentioned that the existing 10-foot driveway through the front yard and next to the house was in disrepair, so that was the first item that they were looking to just repair and replace that existing driveway. Item 2 here is addressing the front yard flare. There is a resident within the home that has some mobility issues, and so that front yard flare was to help with some of that mobility and access into the front door of the house. Item 3 is addressing the rear yard paving addition, mainly speaking to an area of play for the children that live there. And then lastly, item 4, the applicant also has some health conditions and some allergies to the grass that's there, which limits her ability to be outdoors for an extended period of time. Moving on to staff recommendation here. Like I said, we do have some concerns with the excess amount of paving and the runoff that it could generate, especially for the property owner to the south. There's also some concerns with that paving and the forming that's right up to those fences, how that is going to impact those fences long term. And then getting to the specific staff recommendation here. Part A, staff is recommending approval of that front yard paving. That front yard paving consists of about 36% of the front yard area. Looking at the street, there were a few other houses that had some additional front yard paving similar to what is being proposed here by the applicant. So staff was supportive of that front yard portion. We did not feel that it was out of character for the neighborhood, and we felt that it was beneficial to the resident that lives there with the mobility issues. In terms of the second part of the staff recommendation, we're recommending denial of that rear yard paving area. It just seems excessive and unnecessary, and I mentioned some of the concerns with runoff.
Thanks, Kyle. Are there any questions for staff?
Are we talking about the backyard paving that's already there or the paving they're going to put in?
So the paving that is existing is pre-existing. It's been there for a
It
few
has been there,
years.
okay.
So that really isn't subject to discussion tonight. I will say that staff's recommendation on the front yard flare and basically leaving what is existing would put the site at 54% impervious area. Code allows up to 50% impervious area, so with that front yard flare and what they have existing, they're just over what is allowed. Adding that additional rear yard paving would bring the full site up to, I think it was 81% impervious area, which is significantly over what the code allows. Any other questions?
Justin?
What was the usage of it? Are they planning on putting a garage or storage or anything on there?
We don't have a building permit for a garage, so as far as I know, it's just for paving and, paved surface.
Thank
Any
you,
other
Kyle. The applicant's here. You have 10 minutes to present. Please state your name and address and sign in afterwards.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Aimee Rapada. I'm the owner of 2334 East 41st Street in Des Moines. Now my concern is the paving on the backyard, the rear one. The reason why I'm doing to concrete that because of my children's safety of my children. My children have an autism, so it's just the safety to play at, my own property because they cannot walk on the sidewalk and everything like that. And I did also submit from the doctors, that proof, everything's proof, all the health conditions and all the stuff from my children, from my husband, and for myself, but I did submit. So I am requesting for the remaining or rear paving expansion all the way at the back because it's easier it's easier for us to park at the driveway at the back, and then one at a time. My kids, I can take them one at a time instead of parking on the front of the driveway or on the street. Yes, that's what I'm requesting. And then I was just want to share that there's lots of going on. Things happen after we stop the work. Of course, my kids cannot go outside. And then my neighbor also knocked on my door because they cannot park on the street because I was parking my car there. So she was threatening and everything like that. But I did get a report also. I called the police for that. And then that was June 16, and then June 19, my car was parking on the street and someone opened it and someone stole. And I did have the police report either. And my neighbors talked to me. They also received a letter from the city, and some of them, they went to my house that they receive a letter and stuff like that. Supposed to be they're gonna come in here, but we just had a fire on my neighbor last July 5th at 12:30, yesterday, 12:30 a.m. So they said that they also left a message with Mr. Kyle on your voicemail that they said that I'm okay with, with them. That's for them. I'm just only saying what they told me. Oh, I received the letter, and then we left the message with him. I'm okay, whatever, we know your kids, we know your kids, and we know your husband, everything like that. So, yes, that's what I am requesting, or a special permission for the expansion, rear paving on my backyard, and also for my driveway. There's already a driveway when we moved there a year ago. There's already a driveway, but the driveway, the concrete, it's like uneven, so we have to make sure, straighten out, up straight or something like that. As I said, for the safety of my kids, and plus my husband, he's also using a special device. Yeah, but everything, just in case if you will allow me or approve it, I will make sure that I will appropriately, and I already told to my neighbor, whatever left, everything will be done and fixed, whatever, if, if given a chance to approve my proposal. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any commission member have a question or comments for the applicant?
Would it be possible for, instead of concrete in that last remaining portion, to do white rock or pebbles or something like that? Would that meet?
In general, gravel is not an approved surface. We could do if you look in 135, generally it has to be affiliated with some land, and even in landscape areas, we typically are not using gravel because things don't grow well in it. If the commission wanted to grant a design alternative to allow it to be gravelled, you could do that as an alternative. But it's not something that could just be done as an.
The biggest concern probably is the neighbor to the south, because there's a big topography change, right? And I would think everything would just go right into that, yeah.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this request? Opposition? Neutral? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and let the commissioners discuss.
Is there anything, ooh, darn, that was loud. My bad. Wow. Is there anything that can be done in the back of the property to limit that 84% or capture some of the runoff?
Could it be made mulch? I mean,
You could come up with some, a planting scheme and, but I guess I would caution the commission in how does that get maintained? If it's, an area that's, or I'm thinking of grasses and stuff, they're designed to take on a bunch of water and then, how over time, the property gets sold, the new owner doesn't know anything about it, and they just mow it, and, then it's gone, but the pavement will be there. So I guess I would offer caution. I don't know that there's a real way to, realistically, in a residential setting, it's not like a commercial site plan where we could have, a stormwater basin that has to be maintained per the site plan, or some sort of other improvements.
what about turf? If you install artificial turf, does that, just by nature of that professional installation, does that come with stormwater management?
Usually under the basin it does.
Well, this is a residential setting. It's not subject to the same kind of site plans with it being a single family. It's not a commercial level review.
Well, do they don't want to park on it, right? They want to play on it?
Yeah.
Oh, they want to park on it. Oh, okay, I thought it was for playing. Oh, okay, got it.
I feel like the staff recommendation is a fair compromise in trying to just think about if other, if we continue to have yards that are 84%.
I would move staff.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Any additional comments? If not, then all those in favor of moving staff, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? Same sign. Any abstentions or passes? Same sign.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The last item on today's agenda, item number 12, is a request from Craig and Bethany Cryle for a review of public hearing site plan and for type 2 design alternatives in accordance with city code to allow a two-story addition to an existing row building in an RX1 mixed-use district for property located at 1821 High Street. I'll let Kyle take over the presentation.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the Commission, Kyle Larson, planning staff. As Johnny mentioned, this is a substantial addition to an existing row building. The site is at the corner of 19th and High Street, the northeast corner here. The proposal, I'll run through those plans here in a little bit. These are site photos that I took yesterday. The proposal would essentially demolish the house on the left. The lots would be combined, and then the addition would go essentially where the old home sits. It would be a two-story addition, so it would be a story less than what is there. This is a corner view here. This is the site kind of toward the rear, looking from 19th Street. This is the view looking north on 19th Street, and then looking south on 19th Street to give you some site context. I'll probably come back to this a little bit later, but one of the items of relief is sidewalk. So this kind of gives you a general idea of where a sidewalk would be constructed. These are the plans provided by the applicant's architect. Just run through these relatively quickly. This is an existing condition site plan. The hatched area there is that existing home that would be demolished. On the right, kind of in the lighter gray area, is the existing row building. And then this is the plans showing the addition, how it would lay out, including a driveway access from 19th Street, and then a front yard patio area that you see here. And this actually has some artificial turf proposed in this area right here. This is second story plan. And this shows general site with some of the landscaping and plantings that are being proposed. You can see some of those plantings along the west side and south side to screen some of the building along the lower level. Getting to the elevations here, the top left is the west side elevation. So what you'd see from 19th Street. You can see the addition of the two-car parking garage. The top right is the rear elevation. The lower right is the front elevation that you'd see from High Street. The line drawing of the existing row house, and then the colored drawing of the proposed addition. I do want to point out that there is an existing garage stall on the existing portion of the row home. This overhead door, it's my understanding, would open up into living space and kind of open out into that patio and turf area. And then this little rendering is that kind of extension looking from the southeast to the northwest from High Street. Digging into staff recommendation, there are three items of relief that the applicant is seeking. The first one is to allow a minimum lot area less than the required 7,200 square feet for the zoning district. The second is to allow for 2 driveways where only 1 driveway is allowed. And the third is to waive the public sidewalk requirement along 19th Street. There is existing sidewalk along High Street, but as you saw in those existing site photos, there is no sidewalk along 19th Street. The applicant is requesting waiver of that and citing some kind of side grade issues. I'll let them speak to that a little bit more. Specifically, our staff recommendation is to recommend approval of the lot area, also recommend approval of the second driveway, but we are recommending denial of the waiver of the public sidewalk, citing moved ESM and the city engineer's desire to have public sidewalk installed here. This is one of the few segments within the Sherman Hill neighborhood that doesn't have sidewalk. So without sidewalk being installed as part of this project, it's likely that it wouldn't be installed or constructed anytime in the near future. So notification area for the letters. That concludes my presentation. Are there any questions before I turn it over to the applicant? Yeah, Will.
I have a quick question. The Sherman Hill Historic District actually is on Woodland and the south side of Woodland, so this property abuts that on the north, is that correct?
I believe that there is a parcel between that and the historic district. Jason might be able to correct me if
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
wrong.
in general, it is south of the district because that alleyway is the boundary. So
So there is a parcel
There is,
just to
yeah.
the north here, then the alley, and then you're right, gets into the district there.
This is just a personal comment, but I love this building, and right next to the historic district, there's something exciting about that. That's just a comment.
Thank you, Will. I love that. What is the priority, like we talk about priorities for sidewalks in this area?
Yeah, sorry, I missed that in my presentation, but it is a priority one sidewalk area, which again is a reason for staff's recommendation of denial.
And I think the other thing too is that they are going to be doing earthwork, so we felt that this would be the one time where you could actually feasibly impact the grade and make it work.
I know for utilities, we talk about percentage of cost. I don't think we do that for sidewalks, but how expensive is it?
That is not a piece of information that I was provided, but that's probably something that the applicant can speak to when they come up to the podium.
So there's sidewalk across the street.
That's correct.
Where's when does this connect? If they were to do it? Whoa.
I think the short answer is on High Street. It would run up High Street, and then you'd have that intervening parcel. You'd have as far as like getting into Sherman Hill, it would stop.
It would stop at the property line here, which is somewhere in this kind of gravel area. The connection, Jason's right, would be to the south and to High Street.
So that's like, what, 3? How many blocks? Thank you. I don't know the space well.
So that sidewalk extends along the west side of High on up to Woodland. So there would be a gap from the north, I guess, the termination of the north property line to the north along this 611 19th Street. Right-of-way jogs to the right a little bit here. There's also no sidewalk, I don't believe, on the east side of 19th Street, just north of the site there.
There's a sidewalk north of 611.
Okay.
Would we allow the sidewalk to be right on the curb there, like it is across the street on the west side of 19, with no parking? Is that what, and that's called the parking?
Yeah, I think that the right-of-way is narrower in that area, so we would need to work with them to fit it in with the constraints. I was just going to go to that address.
And what about that pole? Is that being buried? I mean, there's a big old power pole right there where, yeah, I mean, that one. I guess it could fit outside of that.
Just to answer the other question, I do believe it would need to be kind of a Class A walk, or, up against the curb like the other side of the street. Right.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's the reality of the width of the right-of-way.
Yeah, I can't speak to the future of the pole and whether or
Are they
not that's going to be
are they
retained. I
burying
don't know what
anything
it's
or no?
servicing.
Okay.
It looks like it's coming from another pole on High Street. I'm not sure. Maybe the applicant has had some
Okay.
discussions on relocating that or eliminating that.
With this being a residential, single family, we don't get into the utility burial stuff as much as like you might see in a commercial site plan.
That's right. Any other questions?
So along those lines, with the Sherman Hill Historic District and those street lamps, this does not come into play for this particular property, right?
Right. Well, the boundary is expanding and actually that's underway. So there's no need to like, in the past, we've had those agreements where we've had them pay into escrow. We're at the point now where Sherman Hill, the organization, is expanding and putting lighting in this area. Yeah. So.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you, Kyle. Applicant is here. You have 10 minutes to present. Please state your name and address and sign in afterwards.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Jamie Malloy with Studio Melee, 139 4th Street, West Des Moines. I'm here representing the homeowners, Craig Cryle. Little background, we started discussion with Nick and city staff back in December about the feasibility of this project and adding on to 1821 High Street, which was one of the first projects we did as an office back in 2013. Back then, we were fortunate to work with staff and planning staff to get quite a few variances to make that house possible on the site, which was only 28 foot wide. They love the house, they love the neighborhood, and as they've grown, they're at a point where they need more space, and in order to stay in the neighborhood, in this small site, and the existing home couldn't accommodate everything they would like. So we began our initial discussions, learned about the planned DSM mixed-use designation. The site was zoned RX1, which technically doesn't allow single-family houses based on the form-based code. So we scheduled a pre-app with staff, with the city in December, and we started working on the site and zoning constraints to this one. We met again in March before we submitted the site plans in April, and so we've been through a long process of working on this project with the city, and we're here today looking forward to get started later this month by getting rid of the house that's literally falling down. So the building type we identified was a row building. We've worked with them to get approval of the building type with a handful of type 1 alternatives. So as a row house, this new addition has been conceived as an extension of the existing house, but also a potential AHU or rentable dwelling unit in the future. So the garage off 19th Street has direct access to a lower level, which is like a flat, with separate living, bedroom, and kitchen space that's disconnected from the rest of the house. The main level on the south side of the garage features some living space, which is access from the main residence and the front door. The upper level of the house has 2 bedrooms and a study nook that's also accessible from the main residence. So we're here today asking for 3 type 2 design alternatives, which Kyle explained. I think the lot area requirement is pretty understandable just due to the physical constraints of the site. The 2 driveways, I think we're appreciative of the support of that. There is already a curb cut on 19th Street, which looks like an alley, but it's just a driveway. And so our proposal slides that down a little bit south to align with the new garage. And basically the programmatic requirement of the rentable unit would need that garage to make it, feasible later down the road if they were to rent that out as a flat. So that brings us to the sidewalk, and is there a way to go back to the photos, or maybe I can just go to the... I have it too. So we've been discussing the sidewalk since our initial meetings back in December, January, and again in March. And it's really been ours and the homeowners' desire to figure out a way to make a sidewalk work here. We've tried a lot of different options, and unfortunately, due to the existing street and the building, it's really not practical, and we have the following reasons. 19th Street, as you saw in some of those other images, slopes downhill to the south at about 10% to 11%, which is a pretty steep hill. And it's actually steeper than an allowable ramp slope. And the geometry of a sidewalk is permitted, if we were to put it on the curb, has to be at a 2% slope, which is just basically 1 inch of fall across the sidewalk. So it needs to be pretty flat. We have, the way we have the addition placed, it's about 15 feet from the street, which is as far as we can practically go to fit a garage in. And we put the floor of the garage, which is already stepped down from the house, down from the main level of the house. We placed it at a point where the north side of the driveway is up a little bit from the road, so we don't get water running back into the house. But that causes the bottom of the south side of the driveway to warp because of the hill it's on. So as it's designed right now, the north side of the driveway is 4.5%. The south side of the driveway is about 20 to 21%, which is kind of a warped plane, right? So if we were to put the sidewalk in, which we've looked at, it pushes that slope narrower, so by 4 feet. And that has to stay pretty much level. So basically what we have at the top of the slope is around the same, and the bottom side gets to be about 32%, which really going over 20% becomes kind of unusable for a driveway, and also potentially dangerous pulling in and out of with vehicles maneuvering it. We've looked at ways to lower the garage floor. Like I said, we stepped the building multiple times. We stepped the basement under the garage down, so that's really not an option. We did look at, even with the staff, what if we put the sidewalk 4 feet into the street, since that's a one-way street and it's already got plenty of width there. We looked at that option. It was kind of discouraged just because of all the logistics of getting that accomplished, I guess. We also, I guess, feel like not having the sidewalk on that street would not really have an adverse effect on the neighborhood. And for a few reasons there. Like I said, there's an existing sidewalk on the west side of 19th Street, which is in alignment all the way north to south, all the way from Sherman Hill to Ingersoll, and eventually to Grand. If we put a new sidewalk on the other side of the street, it's going to be at the same slope as the street, which really doesn't allow any accessible advantage. And as we were talking about before, 19th Street changes alignment there at Woodland. So it turns a corner it turns a slight corner, and the sidewalk alignment jumps way over. So as you can probably see maybe here, the sidewalk going north kind of dives right into the front of 611 19th Street. So basically, any pedestrian coming south would have to cross Woodland, and they could just as easily cross 19th Street and then continue south. Otherwise, they have to cross 2 streets, basically. 611 doesn't have a sidewalk, which we mentioned. The house right now is only 9 feet from the curb, so any development of that site is going to be really, really hard-pressed to put a sidewalk in as well. And then also, there's no sidewalk to the south, across High Street, through the Boot Barn parking lot, and the Tri-City lot. The sidewalk extends partially north, but not all the way to the north end. So we're asking the commission to consider allowing this waiver on the sidewalk in this case. And we really appreciate your consideration, all the requests. I'm happy to answer any questions. And also Craig's here if you have any questions for that. I think what we'd have to do is we'd have to compromise the garage. It would probably have to either shift to the north or it would be a single car driveway, or narrower driveway. It's still going to be really steep, and even that 20% slope is going to be potential, hang up. I mean, I think it's possible something will happen, but it just is definitely potentially hazardous, I suppose.
So as currently proposed, the garage is a two-car garage?
It is. It's
24
It's a
foot?
20-foot wide, a 60-foot door, so it's a pretty narrow garage the way it is.
Did you look at potentially doing it a one-car garage in order to accommodate the sidewalk, or is that not?
Well, if we did, it would pull that slope up, so let's say, I think if we did a one-car garage, it's going to be a 20% slope with the sidewalk instead of, a two-car garage being a 30% slope. It's going to pull it up the hill that much more.
Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, well, thank you. Any members of the audience in support of this request?
Craig Crowd, 1821 High Street. I'll sign in momentarily. I think in regards to the sidewalk issue, we'd love to put in a sidewalk. We've got two small boys that love to ride their bikes. We often go up that hill. It is hard to get up that hill. It's hard to cross the street because there's not any compliant, ramps on the opposite side sidewalk. So it is hard to get up there for a 5-year-old on a bike. Because there is a park across MLK, kind of next to Gateway Market that we frequent. So we'd love to develop sidewalk, we just want to make it work. So if there is a broader plan to put in a sidewalk on the street, we'd be very open to engaging in that and developing alongside that. If there is a plan to put one in, we just don't see a way to do it right now. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you. Any additional comments from the commission? Seeing that no other audience members are present, I will go ahead and close the public hearing and let the commissioners discuss.
Our staff recommendation was approval of parts A and B and denial of C.
This area of the city of Des Moines is one of the most walkable areas in the entire city. And I have a concern if we give relief for this particular sidewalk, we really do set a precedent.
I agree with you, Will, that it is probably the most walkable, and it's really nice to walk around Sherman Hill, and there are good sidewalks. Some of them are brick and different characters around the neighborhood. A lot of foot traffic. I happen to use this hill on the sidewalk on the other side of the 19th in order to walk up to Gateway for lunch, and so I happen to go by this a lot, and And the condition of the sidewalk on the east side of this street, like, so the property's north of there, I think 611, it gets really weird once you're south of Woodland because you're right next to these houses and then it dies, the sidewalk dies and you have to jog over and go across the street anyway. And there's this other neighbor, 611, between the alley and this property. So it's kind of just it's an anomalous condition. It's on the edge of the neighborhood. So that's something that I have got in mind. And then the other thing that I think is interesting about this is that they were able to develop this very narrow contemporary house that I agree with Will is really a pretty great piece of residential architecture, especially in Des Moines, especially near Sherman Hill. It's a great example of how you can do contemporary architecture that does not offend, particularly in the context of a historic neighborhood. And it's a great creative use. The family's lived there for 10 years and wants to stay. And I think that the proposed design is appropriate and frankly excellent and what we want to see. And I think the idea of adding an accessory dwelling unit to it also is really strong and in alignment with a lot of our goals as a city, especially in Sherman Hill, to be able to allow more density and more people to live kind of near the urban core. And so it seems like what we are kind of confronted with and what they're asking us for is to try to sort through the intersection of all those conditions. And what they've indicated is that you kind of can't have everything. You can't have a viable sidewalk and create an accessory dwelling unit that enters off of 19th. You sort of can't do all of that. And when you look at this picture, you see how steep that's going to be, even if they put the sidewalk in. And so I have a lot of sympathy, and I appreciate what they're doing. I wonder if there's any type of middle ground that we could find where, if the 611 is redeveloped, and if it triggers a new sidewalk, maybe then this also is triggered. Is that something that's possible?
Well, I think we'd have them put money into an escrow agreement. That would be kind of what we've done. I mean, that's actually an option for them today, isn't it? No. Trying to remember which sidewalk priorities we allow the escrow. Is that for?
I can't recall many instances in a residential setting where we've done that.
Yeah, I think usually the applicant does, I mean, they had the money up front, and usually they don't want to do that. But that could be something where the commission has them do that, and then the escrow agreements expire after a point in time, and the money's given back to them, basically, if nothing happens. So it'd be kind of a temporary, you'd be issuing like a temporary design alternative and, subject to an escrow agreement.
What would we be stipulating that they do? How do you say that?
Well, I think we would just have them pay, we would come up with, a fee based off of lineal footage average cost from our engineering department, like what's the typical lineal foot cost of a side, and then have them put that in. That's what we've done in the past when we have done escrow agreements. So that would be what you would do. So.
And you said, did those last like 10 years? Is that what you said?
I want to say 15, but yeah, they have a window of time where they expire. It's 10, 15, something like that. So that means if nothing happens in that period, then they get the money back down the road.
Is this the talk then, is that the property to the north? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
But,
that's what,
but wouldn't the design question be the same one then, 20 years or 10 years from now?
Yeah, because this would have already been done. The design of the building, the way they're going to do it would have already been done, so
yeah, you're not,
it's not really feasible, right?
really the best time to do it would be now, because when are you gonna, mess with the grade, especially if that driveway goes in?
Well, if I understand it, the driveway sets the upper level of the grade, right? The south edge of the driveway sets your kind of high point of that stretch of sidewalk, and it sounds like they're saying not that it's infeasible to build it or impossible, just that it's undesirable because of grade. Is that right? Is that fair?
Yeah, the sidewalk cross slope has to be fairly minimal, so you can't start getting up to the garage until past that, so that makes their driveway,
Too steep?
yeah, more steep after you get past the sidewalk. I think that's what I understood.
Have the city engineers taken a look at those designs with the sidewalk and looking at those issues?
The traffic engineer didn't look at the plans itself. He was mainly speaking from recommendations made in Plan DSM, or Move DSM.
So there could potentially be a submittal where those sidewalk is shown and we can see all of the grade issues and all of the potential things that we don't want to see right now.
Again, I don't think that that's typically something that he would get involved with. That's kind of the process that's laid out with the type 2 design alternative for the commission to kind of take those things into consideration, hear from the applicant, and then make a decision.
This is a question I feel like I should know the answer to, but are you allowed to make a sidewalk with steps?
I'm sorry, I was doing a little research. We actually, the going into deferral with the escrow is something that we can do. That was what we changed in the code to allow us, but the applicant, that's not what they pursued. And you asked a question about, can you have steps in the walk? Is that, I don't think it's typical. I mean, I think, as far as like the direct grade, it is whatever the grade is. Where they get concerned is the cross slope. That's where they really control so I mean, a hill is a hill. You're just gonna have a steeper walk. We have those all over. But the notion of doing an escrow agreement, we could actually have done that administratively.
Any additional comments or questions from commissioners?
I guess I just don't understand the benefits of the escrow. If the problems are still going to be there in 15 or 20 years, I don't understand. I guess we're just saying we just aren't going to make them pay for it now, or I guess we are. Put the money in, but how does that benefit them?
I think it benefits them because if I understand them, they're saying not that they don't want to do the sidewalk for any other reason other than they think it's infeasible and not a good sidewalk. Like they're kind of making an argument against it based on its usefulness. And so my logic is that if the property to the north should be redeveloped, that where the sidewalk has to terminate anyway, coming from Woodland down, if that thing were to be redeveloped, which it might be, then it makes more sense for the sidewalk to come all the way from Woodland down to High. You could make the same argument that, I mean, they could make the same argument at that time that says, well, why should I have to do it? The one to the south doesn't have it, but I guess the escrow agreement in place already would sort of make it all comply at that time.
And what would trigger the escrow? It wouldn't just be a redevelopment of the other property. It would be if the city decided, because this is priority 1 area, to take it upon themselves to put a sidewalk.
That was the original intent or concept, is that money would be there. Let's say we have a whole block and the city's going to do a project and we've had a couple owners in that block pay an escrow. We would take that escrow, add it to the city project and do the whole block. This is a little different in the sense that basically we have two property owners. One would, in theory, pay into escrow, and then you're either waiting, a triggering event would be the neighbor to the north doing something that would require a sidewalk, or the city going in. Yes. Yeah.
Sounds like we have some ideas for a motion on that side of the table.
I guess I'd kind of like to ask the applicant if they're open to the idea of the escrow mechanism.
Well, appreciate the discussion. Have been in part of developments with the escrow situation before, and I get the sidewalk to nowhere argument. This one's a little bit different because I think it's a feasibility issue, and like I don't know who said it, but we still have to figure out the elevations. Like if it were to get imposed on us 10 years from now, then we have to regrade everything, change the driveway at that time. I think it would be, you know, if that's the case, if this little section is that important, then we would need to do it now somehow. I guess I would question the lot north of us and this lot in question are clearly an anomaly in the neighborhood. The houses are so close to the street and the lots are so narrow that, and the hill is so severe, I feel like that sidewalk on that side of the street is going to be forced in there no matter who's doing it at what time. And it just seems to me like you have the sidewalk on the opposite side. What additional benefit do you have with this sidewalk connecting one block, you know, between two streets that you're going to have to cross anyway? I guess that would be my argument, when it is such a narrow right-of-way.
This might be a question of easement. Would they be allowed to take on some of that city space in the street and build a sidewalk there to avoid grade? Just make the street narrower? Maybe make it one way?
It is one, it's currently one.
It is already one way?
It was just discouraged, I would say. I guess it probably more of a process.
It's a one-way street already?
Yeah, it's already a one-way coming down the street. Yeah.
Can we not take some of the easement?
Yeah, I mean, we don't really, I think the commission's motion could, if you happen to think that that's, well, let me take a step back. If you would like that to be looked at, then I would suggest the item be continued, and we talk to engineering and come back and let you know.
Absolutely.
I would encourage the city and everybody to look at this a little closer because there's already a safe sidewalk on the west side of the street. And if we're putting a sidewalk in that's creating a more hazardous condition than that sidewalk, I mean, the sidewalk issues are crazy. How many hours have we spent in here talking about sidewalks? Now we're talking about one that's like 80 feet long, and there's already one right there that's safe? I don't know.
I just want to add, yeah.
How do I make a?
I'll let you make the motion. Yes, either one sidewalk or allow them to take possession of the city easement of the street and build a sidewalk in. If it's already one way, it just makes sense.
Jason, can you help me find the words for a motion? Would you be open do we delay this? No, okay, no.
I think that's a part of the problem, that our engineering has
Yeah.
not taken a look at it. They have just said,
Okay.
I think I have a
Here's
motion.
what we'll do.
Okay.
Leia's helping me here. We're going to move staff for A and B and deny C.
Yeah, I mean, what you're doing is you're moving approval of parts A, B, and C. You guys don't deny staff. You approve.
We'll take
you
the
approve.
denial of staff.
It's my pet peeve. Yeah, right.
you can blame it on me. I started that. Sounds like we have a motion on the floor to move staff and support the type 2 design alternative for C.
Right, yeah, approve, yep. Yes.
What about the stipulations? Can we add stipulation?
Would you like to make a friendly amendment? It's up to Todd
Yeah.
to determine if.
Well, because approving these two, what are we getting out of these again? Eliminates just. Okay. Gotcha.
We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign.
Motion carries.
Thank you. That was the last item on the agenda for today. Any committee or directors' reports?
I just wanted to share, Rick has joined us, so I don't know if we want to put you on the spot, make you introduce yourselves, but maybe Rick Trower, and if you want to go ahead and just give us a brief overview, and then I think what I'd like is for after the meeting for folks, so we don't have to go around the room, make this meeting longer, but for you all to go up and introduce yourselves, but maybe Rick, just for the sake of expediency, share a couple things with us.
Sure, I'll stand up and talk loud. So I know a lot of you guys in here, a few of you guys are looking at Rick Brower, lifelong resident of the south side of Des Moines, come from a construction background, I have a construction engineering degree from Iowa State, project manager at Moines Brothers Construction, been in the construction industry my whole life, multiple generations, involved a lot in the community, past neighborhood association president, care a lot about the city that I live in, so I got this opportunity. I thought that it would be great to connect with more people and help the city thrive and work with all of you. So look forward to getting to know you better. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Dan. Yes. The only other thing I had to, is just an advance warning that we will have a 5:30 session at the first meeting in August. So not this upcoming meeting in July, but just thinking forward into August. Realize we'll need you here.
So that calendar invite that he gives us for
Yes.
5:30 is real this time.
Yeah, in August, first meeting in August.
Motion to
That's all I
adjourn?
had, yes, we're good. No, just
Thank
grab
you.
hold of that.